In the serene Nakamixon Township, nestled within the rural confines of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, a tranquil community thrives, with approximately 3,000 residents calling it home. This picturesque area is renowned for its unwavering dedication to preserving natural beauty and promoting tourism. However, this peaceful setting was forever scarred by a heinous crime that unfolded in 1980, casting a long shadow over the region. On the ill-fated day of September 18, 1980, a construction worker toiled away on a cottage undergoing renovations. The cottage was nestled amidst the dense woods off Center Hill Road, approximately 1 mile south of its intersection with Kintner Hill Road in Nakamixon Township. In the midst of his labor, fate led him to stumble upon a gruesome sight, a lifeless body concealed beneath the wooden structure. This grim discovery shattered the tranquility of the forest, leaving the entire community in mourning and investigators grappling with an enigmatic puzzle. The lifeless body, upon its grim revelation, was conveyed to the morgue, where it underwent a thorough examination under the skilled hands of the medical examiner. The results were chilling. The man had sustained 4 fatal gunshot wounds to the head. The victim was subsequently identified as Richard Wesley Wheeler, his identity confirmed through a fingerprint match in the records. Armed with this critical information, investigators embarked on an arduous journey to uncover the layers of Wheeler's past, seeking to unearth the truth behind his tragic demise. As the investigation into Richard Wesley Wheeler's murder unraveled, a troubling revelation emerged. Wheeler had a criminal record. Having been released from prison just a year earlier in 1979, it appeared that he wasted no time reacquainting himself with trouble. He was soon linked to a perilous venture, an illicit methamphetamine lab jointly operated with 2 other men, Peter Eric Marshall and Leslie Schmidt. This lab was clandestinely housed in a camper parked near Lake Nakamixon, a risky endeavor fueled by determination. However, the enterprise took a sinister turn when Wheeler mysteriously vanished, and shortly thereafter, his lifeless body was discovered. Detectives understood that to solve this perplexing case, they needed to delve deeper into the workings of this illicit operation. It became evident that Wheeler was the mastermind, residing on the same property and closely overseeing the activities. The operation was further guarded by the formidable and loyal bodyguard, Peter Eric Marshall, while imprisoned financier Leslie Schmidt, though detained, kept a watchful eye on proceedings. Fate intervened when Richard Wheeler, a former convict, found himself incarcerated once more for a previous crime, theft of boats, which earned him the nickname the Captain. Schmidt, on the other hand, was serving a sentence in a different facility, but had entrusted Wheeler with a substantial sum of money for management. Their unlikely companionship flourished, leading them down a dark and perilous path. Upon delving further into Marshall's background, it was revealed that he had been imprisoned for stealing a 41-foot sailboat. Despite being ordered to leave the islands and deported back to Germany, Marshall's love for the sea remained unquenchable. He found work as a crewman on a private yacht, relishing the freedom and adventure of the ocean once more. However, in February 1977, while the yacht's owners were ashore enjoying an evening out, Marshall used his nautical skills to abscond with the 41-foot sailboat, along with a substantial amount of cash totaling $10,000. Marshall's audacious exploits continued when, just a month later, in March 1977, he targeted an even larger prize, a 43-foot sailboat docked in a harbor in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. Marshall's insatiable thirst for adventure and penchant for eluding authorities were evident. Nevertheless, his criminal journey eventually led him to a federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut, in May 1977, where he crossed paths with 2 notorious individuals, Wheeler and Schmidt. Bonding over their shared criminal histories, the trio hatched a plan to enter the illegal drug trade upon their release from prison. Wheeler was the first to regain his freedom in November 1979, marking a pivotal moment in their operation. Later that same year, Schmidt was granted a 30-day furlough from prison, a decision that would significantly impact the methamphetamine operation. Seizing this opportunity, Schmidt orchestrated a critical connection for Wheeler, leading to the lease of a property in the tranquil township of Nakamixon. The collaboration reached its apex when Schmidt generously provided Wheeler with a substantial sum of $250,000 intended to support Schmidt's family while he completed the remainder of his sentence. Wheeler understood the weight of this responsibility and the need to use the funds wisely. In July 1980, Peter Eric Marshall was released from prison, but his newfound freedom was short-lived. U.S. immigration officials from JFK Airport in New York City were escorting him to his homeland of Germany, a place he had not called home since his youth. Marshall knew that he had to act swiftly to avoid an undesirable fate. As he boarded the plane, he covertly scanned for an opportunity to escape, and then, as if Providence had intervened, the pilot announced a flight cancellation due to mechanical issues. Amidst the ensuing chaos, Marshall seized his chance and vanished into the bustling crowds of the airport. In 1983, armed with a wealth of information and a growing resolve, investigators embarked on a renewed quest to unravel the unsolved murder case. Witnesses were interviewed, and through their testimonies the fragments of the puzzle began to coalesce. It was revealed that the triggerman, of German descent, had been hired by none other than Leslie Schmidt himself, the shooter's identity traced back to his time in Danbury Federal Prison. As the intricate web of connections and relationships slowly unraveled, it became evident that a tapestry of deceit and greed had precipitated Wheeler's tragic demise. The investigation posed formidable challenges, but through unrelenting determination, Bucks County Detective David Hanks eventually untangled the mystery. In 2023, Peter Eric Marshall reappeared in Upper Bucks County, but his return was far from harmonious. Tensions simmered between Wheeler, Schmidt, and the two businessmen, hurtling them toward a violent collision. Schmidt had grown suspicious of Wheeler, convinced that he was swindling him out of his share of the methamphetamine profits. In a fit of rage, Schmidt ordered Marshall to eliminate Wheeler, whom he believed had betrayed him. Marshall, who had been fiercely loyal to Wheeler for years, found himself in a precarious situation. Ultimately, he reluctantly followed Schmidt's orders, fatally shooting Wheeler, and then hastily fled across state lines into New Jersey. The investigation laid bare a dark facet of human nature, where the insatiable craving for wealth and power could culminate in unimaginable acts of violence. The once enigmatic cold case, which had long cast a shadow of uncertainty, finally found resolution. The meticulous investigative work pieced together the missing elements, constructing a timeline of events that ultimately led to closure. The relentless pursuit of Marshall, who had vanished after the murder, resembled a relentless hunt for a phantom. However, investigators refused to yield, scouring every shred of evidence and pursuing every lead. In March 2023, a breakthrough emerged, a critical piece of information from Marshall's criminal history that would finally lead them to their elusive target. It was akin to finding a needle in a haystack when investigators unearthed that Marshall had been arrested in 1982 on drug conspiracy charges in New York. During that arrest, he had identified himself as Charles McLaren. Leveraging modern technology, investigators matched the fingerprints from McLaren's arrest to those taken in 1977. This discovery exposed how Marshall had managed to obscure his true identity, assuming a new persona as Charles McLaren. Under this new identity, Marshall crafted an entirely different life, complete with a wife, children, and even a thriving limousine service in the bustling metropolis. For over 2 decades, he remained hidden, with his criminal past a distant memory. After years of relentless pursuit and the painstaking assembly of the puzzle, the Bucks County District Attorney's Office finally brought closure to the case, although the culprits had already passed away, Marshall in 2006 and Schmidt in 2022. Justice had ultimately been served for the victim and his grieving family. While the legacy of the crime and the names of the individuals involved would forever be etched in history, the resolution of the case serves as a poignant reminder that law enforcement perseveres in their quest for truth and justice. With the case now closed, the Bucks County District Attorney's Office can move forward, knowing that they have fulfilled their duty to seek justice and bring closure to a dark chapter in their community's history. Nestled in the heart of Knoxville, Tennessee, lies Buck Tom's Park. It may not have been the largest playground in the city, but it held a special place in the hearts of many families. For those seeking a tranquil escape from the urban hustle and bustle, this park was a haven. During the day, the sounds of children's laughter and the creaking of swings filled the air, creating a joyful atmosphere. However, as the sun set, the park's serenity took on a different tone. Buck Tom's Park, under the cover of nightfall, often transformed it into a sacred sanctuary for some, where they indulged in forbidden vices away from prying eyes. Yet, it was on a fateful evening, April 13th, 1984, that this peaceful setting was shattered by a gut-wrenching discovery that would leave the entire community in shock and turmoil. What was uncovered among the trees and playground equipment that day would haunt the memories of those who bore witness to it. The unfortunate discoverer of this horrifying scene was none other than a young girl from the neighboring community. She was innocent-hearted and inquisitive, and she had been playing near the park when something caught her eye: a lifeless body. As she cautiously approached the motionless figure lying amidst a pool of crimson, a shiver ran down her spine. The woman's face was concealed, buried in the dirt and leaves, but even from her vantage point, the child sensed that something was terribly wrong. With her heart racing, the young girl edged closer, only to be confronted by a sight that would scar her for life. The woman's clothing was disheveled, and her body bore gaping wounds. The sight of a shattered knifey, with its blade and handle lying ominously nearby, sent shivers down the girl's spine. The brutality of the scene was almost unbearable, even for a child with innocence still in her eyes. Overwhelmed by fear, she ran towards the nearest adult, her voice quivering as she described the gruesome scene she had stumbled upon. Horror and panic gripped everyone who heard her account. The community was jolted into action, rallying concerned citizens who immediately contacted the authorities. In no time, Buck Tom's Park, once serene, became a hive of activity as police officers swarmed the area, their faces reflecting disbelief at the brutality of the crime. They wondered who could commit such an atrocious act. With the utmost care, the investigators meticulously combed the scene, searching for any evidence that might shed light on the victim's fate. Every stone was overturned, every bush scrutinized, but their efforts yielded nothing. It was as if the perpetrator had vanished into thin air. Finally, the victim's battered body was loaded into an ambulance and whisked away, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The victim was soon identified as Terry Lynn Majors Kirkland, a 23-year-old woman born in 1960 with roots in Knoxville. Beyond these basic details, little was known about her life, including her upbringing, schooling, and the events that led to her tragic end. The news of Terry's death spread like wildfire throughout the community, eliciting shockwaves of grief and fear. Her family, upon receiving the devastating news, was left reeling with heartbreak and disbelief. How could Terry, so young and full of life, meet such a brutal end? But Terry's family was not alone in their grief. The entire community was rocked by the tragedy. People couldn't stop talking about it, struggling to come to terms with the violent incident that shattered their peaceful haven. The fact that such a horrific crime had occurred in a public space only added to the fear and paranoia gripping the community. Parents were afraid to let their children out of their sight, and even adults hesitated to venture out after dark. The once familiar streets and playgrounds now seemed to hold a sinister presence, a constant reminder of the darkness lurking beneath the surface. As the investigation progressed, the results of Terry's autopsy, conducted in Ontario, revealed a new and horrifying detail. Terry had not only suffered multiple stab wounds, but had also been struck in the head with a brutal blow. The investigation into Terry's murder soon became one of the most intense and exhaustive hunts for a killer in the history of Knoxville. Detectives worked tirelessly, conducting interviews, following leads, and scrutinizing every scrap of evidence. However, despite their best efforts, the killer remained elusive, taunting them from the shadows. In a desperate attempt to crack the case, former Tennessee Governor Lamar Alexander offered a substantial reward for information leading to the capture of Terry's killer, but even the promise of a cash windfall failed to coax anyone forward. For the detectives assigned to the case, it was a frustrating and demoralizing period. Every lead seemed to peter out into a dead end, and every interview yielded nothing but vague rumors and hearsay. As the years passed, Terry's family was left to grieve alone, and it seemed as though the killer had gotten away with murder, with justice for Terry forever out of reach. After years of silence, the investigation into Terry Kirkland's brutal murder was reignited in 2018. Detective Jeff Day from the Knoxville Police Department was assigned to the case, and he was determined to bring the killer to justice. As he delved into the case files, he became convinced that the killer was someone who knew Terry intimately. The level of violence indicated a personal motive, and Detective Jeff hoped that someone in the community would come forward with information. In that year, they had a strong suspect, but couldn't reveal their identity just yet. As the investigation continued, the people of Knoxville wondered if justice would finally be served for Terry. February 2023 marked a month of new beginnings for the Knoxville Police Department as they launched a brand new homicide unit. This unit was unlike any other, comprised of a team of highly skilled and experienced investigators dedicated to solving some of the city's most heinous and brutal crimes. Their mission was clear: to bring justice to victims and their families, no matter how long ago the crime had been committed. The homicide unit wasted no time getting to work, and one of the first cases they took on was the unsolved murder of Terry Lynn Majors Kirkland. The case had remained cold for decades, but this new team of investigators was determined to find the killer and bring them to justice. They painstakingly reviewed every piece of evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and followed up on leads, all in the hopes of finally unraveling the mystery of Terry's death. In March 2023, the Knoxville Police Department made a long-awaited announcement that sent shockwaves throughout the community. Less than a month after its formation, the newly established homicide unit had cracked Terry's murder case. While the authorities refused to divulge the identity of the suspect, or the method used to identify them, they did confirm that the suspect had passed away in 2021. The District Attorney General's office had also deemed that there was enough evidence to prosecute the case if the suspect had been alive. The community experienced mixed emotions: relief that the case had finally been solved, yet frustration that the person responsible could not face justice. For Terry's family and friends, the announcement brought a sense of closure and peace after years of unanswered questions and grief. While the details of the investigation remained shrouded in mystery, the fact that the killer had finally been identified and held accountable offered some measure of solace. Perhaps one day the police will decide to share more about how they cracked the case, but for now the community can rest, knowing that the homicide unit achieved a remarkable feat in a short time. Granby, a charming small town nestled in the heart of Colorado, boasts a wealth of artistic and cultural attractions that draw in residents and tourists alike. The town is a haven for adventurers seeking the thrill of mountain life, surrounded by the laughter of those who call Granby home. However, beneath the picturesque facade of this tranquil town, a dark and horrifying incident marred its history in 1978. On November 15, 1978, a group of children were innocently playing along a logging road just off Amherst Road, about 15 miles from Springfield in Granby. Their carefree day took a sinister turn when they stumbled upon an ominous sight hidden beneath a pile of leaves, concealed beneath a log. As they cautiously approached the mysterious object, their shock and fear intensified as they discovered the lifeless body of a woman. The children immediately contacted the authorities, and the police hurried to the scene. What awaited them was a gruesome and unsettling scene: a decomposing body of a woman with a gunshot wound to her forehead. Adding to the macabre nature of the discovery, a man's belt was found tightly secured around her neck. The investigators combed the area meticulously in search of any clues that could shed light on this baffling crime. Yet their efforts were thwarted by the absence of a wallet, pocketbook, or any form of identification that could offer a lead to identify the victim. The body was swiftly sent for an autopsy, and the medical examiner's office confirmed the harrowing details of the woman's demise. She had been fatally shot in her temple, and the estimated time of her death pointed to a range between June and August. Beyond that, she remained an enigma, an unidentified woman between the ages of 19 and 27, standing at 5 feet 4 inches tall, with dirty blonde hair. The sole piece of evidence, the man's belt used to drag her body into the woods, did little to narrow down the pool of suspects or provide clues to her identity. Granby's police chief, John R. Kirchhoff, shared with the media that very little remained of the victim's body, which had undergone extensive decomposition. Almost all that remained was her skeletal structure. With so little to go on, the investigators had to rely on the details they could extract from her clothing. She wore a blouse, blue jeans, and shoes, all sized 14 to 16, indicating a chunkier build. Her clothing suggested that she might have been a young woman, but it lacked any tags or labels that could provide a lead. Despite the lack of concrete information, her clothing played a crucial role in engaging the public. The most significant detail was the short-sleeve pullover blouse, size 14, adorned with a green swan embroidered on the front and a green imitation suede collar. Additionally, a gold ring adorned one of her fingers, possibly a wedding ring. The authorities scoured recent missing persons reports to find a match but came up empty-handed. Furthermore, the victim's dental examination revealed a noticeable decay in her front teeth, prompting a search for dental records among the recently reported missing persons. Unfortunately, this endeavor yielded no results. The location of the discovery off Amherst Road near Route 116 raised the possibility that the victim might have been connected to one of the 5 colleges accessible via this route. The investigators delved into this avenue of inquiry, scrutinizing the student records of Mount Holyoke College in South Hadley, the University of Massachusetts, Hampshire and Amherst colleges in Amherst, and Smith College in Northampton. Regrettably, no reports of a missing female student matched the victim's description. As their leads dwindled, a glimmer of hope emerged when a motel operator contacted the authorities, believing that the description of the victim's body matched that of a woman who had checked into their establishment in early 1978. Promptly, the police located this woman, who was still alive and in good health. The mystery of the unknown woman persisted, and she became known as the Granby Girl. Over the years, sporadic leads would surface only to fizzle out, leaving the Granby Girl's identity shrouded in obscurity. In September 1998, nearly 2 decades after her tragic death, a group of Granby residents gathered at her resting place in the cemetery. They raised $500 to replace the wooden cross marking her grave with a permanent marker bearing the inscription, "Unknown, November 15, 1978, in God's care." It stood as a poignant symbol of a community's enduring care for an unnamed woman, whose hopes, dreams, troubles, and anxieties remained forever concealed from the world. Fast forward to 2021, and a new ray of hope illuminated the case. Detectives reached out to Othram Laboratories, a Houston-based corporation specializing in forensic genealogy. Through their expertise, a DNA profile was successfully constructed for the Granby Girl. Detectives reached out to Othram Laboratories, a Houston-based corporation specializing in forensic genealogy. Through their expertise, a DNA profile was successfully constructed for the Granby Girl. When compared against the national database, it yielded a match to a woman residing in Maryland. Astonishingly, this woman revealed that her aunt had disappeared in the 1970s and was willing to provide more information about her aunt's disappearance. The trail led to Matthew Dale, who shared a pivotal connection to the Granby Girl. He disclosed that his mother, Patricia Ann Tucker, had gone missing in 1978 when he was a mere 5 years old. The police explained the circumstances surrounding the Granby Girl, and Matthew agreed to provide his DNA sample in the hopes of finding his long-lost mother. In a matter of hours, the results confirmed a parent-child relationship between Matthew and the Granby Girl, finally providing closure to a 43-year-old mystery. Patricia Ann Tucker, born on July 28, 1950, was officially identified as the Granby Girl. Patricia had gone through multiple marriages and bore different last names such as Heckman and Dale. However, At the time of her tragic demise in 1978, at the age of 28, she went by the name Patricia Coleman. She had married Gerald Coleman just a year before her untimely death, and they had made their home along the eastern shore of Lake Pocatapog in East Hampton, Connecticut. Following her disappearance, many in her family speculated that she had fallen in with a dangerous crowd, and some believed she had entered a witness protection program. For Matthew Dale, the son who had grown up amid a cloud of uncertainty and rumors, the revelation of his mother's fate came in his 30s. At a press conference, First Assistant Northwestern District Attorney Stephen Gage expressed gratitude for the breakthrough in identifying the victim. He commended Othram Laboratories for their remarkable technological advancements in DNA analysis. However, he emphasized that the investigation into the murder would not rest until the perpetrator was brought to justice. While they lacked direct evidence, Gerald Coleman, Patricia's husband at the time of her death, was considered a person of interest. Strangely, he had never reported her disappearance to the police, casting a shadow of suspicion over his involvement. Gerald Coleman, convicted of sexual assault, battery, indecent assault, and assault with a dangerous weapon, passed away in prison in 1996. His death deprived the investigators of the opportunity to question him about Patricia's murder while he was still alive. Now they turned to the public, urging anyone with information about the case to come forward and assist in finally closing the chapter on this horrifying crime. Matthew Dale, the son who had long yearned for answers, expressed his gratitude to the diligent detectives, saying, "Thank you for never giving up on her. At least I have some answers now after 44 years. It's a lot to process, but hopefully the closure can begin now." While he possessed few mementos of his mother, including a single photograph, a lock of his hair she had kept, a baby book she had lovingly created, and a small tapestry she had painted during his childhood, he remained committed to honoring her memory. He remarked, "What I want to do is have a new gravestone made for her. She deserves to have her name on it." In conclusion, the long-standing mystery of the Granby girl, an unidentified murder victim found in 1978, has finally been resolved through advanced DNA analysis and the determination of investigators. Patricia Ann Tucker, a woman who had gone missing and was presumed dead, has been identified as the Granby girl. While this revelation brings closure to her son and the community, the search for her killer continues, with hopes that justice will eventually be served. Patricia's tragic story serves as a reminder of the enduring commitment of law enforcement and the power of science in solving cold cases that have haunted communities for decades.